Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being with me today. So good to see you. I hope you are having a nice week. How many of you were in chapel today? Bunch of you? Yeah, I'm not usually in chapel. Today I was. And I thought that was a really nice message from Show Baraka. That was so good. So I will try and come to more chapel sessions, okay? I run an important committee on our campus, so I need to finish our class no later than 3:55 so that I can log into this machine and do my meeting for 4 p.m. So I'm going to try and make sure that we run to that schedule and be done by 3:55, no later than that. Okay, so I had a tough choice. Do I put something online for you or bring you here? We should be plenty fine. I think so. So that's what's going to happen. All right. Where are we and where are we going? We're going to finish chapter 10 today. I have the second half of that. You don't have any homework from me, so you can devote your time to A and P, those of you who are trudging through A and P and your other assignments. Next week, we are going to be in chapter 12. And then you have a reading summary and an analysis paper next week as well. Next week is the last opportunity to drop out of the class. So you have until November the 5th to drop out of the class. So here's what I do. I'm an academic advisor, right? So for all of my advisees, after we submitted midterm grades, they send me a list of grades for all of my 20 advisees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a pocket of time and I'm going to write all of my advisees. Hey, I see you have a straight 4.0, well done. What do you need from me? If any of my advisees have a D plus going down, hey, what's going on with the D plus? Have you spoken with the professor? Have you made the necessary adjustments? Oftentimes it's students who are needing to work, take care of siblings, etc., etc. What adjustment have you made to make sure you correct this? And is there a chance for you to pass the course? I might say to that student, if we go back and forth and they communicate with me, you might need to opt to dropping the class no later than November the 5th and opt for a W, or negotiate with the professor, make the necessary adjustments so that you move that D or F grade into a passing grade. That's what I would do. I don't know what your other professors will do, but communication is super, super important. So that's just my process. I don't know what your other professors do. That's my thing. Anyway, that's a quick side note. Today, I will walk you through the remainder of chapter 10. Last class, we talked about some weight loss strategies. And so I don't know what you are doing, but some of you will go into spaces where you work with individuals who need this information. So remember that chapter 10 does a really nice job of advising the reader of some wonderful weight loss strategies, okay? And so I remember I gave you this slide and I showed you what's important in this section for the next learning check. Not next week, but the week after that, you have a learning check for chapters 9, 10, and chapter 12. So you need to take a look at this guy and remember that I give you information about every single chapter in terms of some of the things that are important for what comes next. So we finished it off with information with the handout number 2 that I asked you to complete. So I want you to kindly whip that out, your handout number 2. Okay, and I want us to do a quick, like, I want you to look at it and I want you to study it, okay? Handout number 2. Let's take a quick look at it. Who needs a copy? I can't walk today. Can you help me come in and distribute this? My back is also, yeah. Take a quick second and complete that guy. Yep. Good job. Part of the homework from the last class was to download this and to complete it. So this is a handout that is talking at some of the concepts around motivation. I'll give you a minute for the latecomers to complete this exercise. That was homework. In a minute, I'm going to invite you to talk about what was interesting on this worksheet. What you thought was, what stood out for you. What was appalling, revolting. Now tabulate your score. You're supposed to tabulate and see and add up the numbers. Then you come up with a score. So if you've not done that, take half a minute to tabulate. Use your calculator. You're supposed to come up with a score.
So you want to tabulate what we have the most?
Nope. You're supposed to count everything and see what you get. Okay, right. So I want you to find a human being and just kind of talk about this little guy that's talking at motivation. What stood out for you?
What? No, I'm sorry. This is on sleep. Yeah. Yeah. I was confused. How do I say words? Oh, just add them all together. By the time the money was wrapping over 6 this summer, I thought this was not done. I love the semester study abroad. I like I don't know what that means, but given the chance out into like sort of still yeah. So Mark said he said, well, my lowest standing was a 4, and that was the first.
Okay. I put 8.
There's 2, so I'm more like 1. I'm very high. No, jumping is frustrating. I don't want to take classes that are related to my peers with this. I went to liberal arts. I never made sorry, if I had the time and money, I would try to proceed.
Okay, one more minute and then I'll bring you back.
Yeah, that's the first thing. I know how to play tennis.
I feel like my major
I did like so that I know where you're going.
Okay, you gotta wrap it up, otherwise we run out of time. Right, how many of you had 140 and above? 140 and above? 130 and above? 120 and above? Okay, you are my people. Okay, 110. Okay, 100. Okay, 90. Okay, 80. All right. So you folks lean towards the higher score. The rest of you who are on the low end, listen to the worksheet or the directions for this assignment. I'm going to read it for you. Far from reducing a physiological need or minimizing tension, some motivated behaviors increase arousal. For example, well-fed animals will leave their shelter to explore, apparently in the absence of any need-based drive. Similarly, curiosity drives monkeys to monkey around trying to figure out how to unlock a latch that opens nothing. Handout 2, constructed by Jeffrey D. Green and W. Keith Campbell, assesses the human tendency to explore. Total score is the sum of scores for the 18 items. Scores can range from 18 to 144, with higher scores reflecting greater desire to investigate new and complex social, intellectual, and environmental stimuli. So why do you feel driven to experience stimulation? Why do people show such a wide variation in this motive? Green and Campbell argue that individual differences are linked to attachment styles. Those demonstrating a secure attachment are more likely, are much more open to exploration than are those with an anxious or avoidant style. In my upper division human development classes, we talk about the different kinds of attachments that people have with their parents or caregivers. So there's 4 attachment types, lesson for those classes, right? So folks who are securely attached have healthy, nice attachments, and they trust their caregivers. Therefore, they trust that the world is safe for them to explore or play with other kids, knowing that mom or dad or parent or caregiver is close by. They are a secure base. Child can go and explore and come back to mom or parents and call out to them and get support if they need that support. So what Green and Campbell are saying through this study is that it boils down to the kind of attachment that people still have with their parents, caregivers. And those who are more securely attached are more likely to be the ones to go out and explore because it's safe to do that. So anyway, conversation for a different day. But I hope you enjoyed this exercise around trying to see what makes you feel good, what makes you feel comfortable, and helping to get at this concept of motivation and how that plays a big part in our comfort level with a lot of these things. It boils down to the kind of attachment people have with their primary caregivers. Any questions or comments about this exercise and this aspect of motivation? Okay, all right, let's try and get some notes done. We're now talking about motivation and work in this section, picking it up from last time. And we're talking about 4 situational influences you may have noticed, but understated, right? Watching an intense action movie. The presence of others. Size of serving and dinnerware. And food variety and how this promotes eating. So this is connected to eating. Studies showed that when watching an intense movie, people tend to snack more. A lot of people in this room like movies, right? Think of the last movie you went to. It's a cinema. What did you buy at the station? When you bought your ticket, what else did you do after using the restroom, if you used the restroom, before you went and sat to watch your movie? Yes, sir. You're gonna get a bucket of popcorn. Some of us love tons of butter in the popcorn, all right? That's what this is talking at. What else did you get?
You gotta go to the Dollar Tree and get Dollar Tree.
And sneak in a ton of killer snacks and treats. I know you, I know what people. Because they overcharge for theirs, right? What about the presence of others? Think of the last party or get together you went to. The presence of other people amplifies natural behavior and tendencies. So you ate a lot of good food, right? So that does something to our motivation to eat. What about size of serving and dinnerware? Serving size is significant. Quantity of consumed food is influenced by the size of serving and the kind of plates they give you. That can determine how much you're going to eat. So if you are thinking of weight loss strategies, think about the dinnerware. You use a big plate, you're likely to eat more food. Use a smaller plate, you're likely to eat less food. Food variety promotes eating. Before COVID happened, how many of you can think of a buffet place you went to from time to time? Yeah? How much food did you eat when you went to a buffet? You want to try a lot of things, right? Yeah. So that does something to our motivation to eat as well. So solution, new practices such as school lunch tray, making fruits and veggies more prominent, etc., etc. Your book goes into some of this information at great length. Now, as a nonprofit on the weekend, they deal with kids who struggle with eating disorders. So there are sometimes kiddos who come into the program and the youth trainers, the youth advocates, are instructed So they have to open rooms everywhere. It's a locked facility, it's a locked program. So if someone wants to go to the bathroom, they have to ask, can you let me into the bathroom? And they use advocate with a key will open, the bathroom. They want to go into their room, they have their own individual rooms. The youth advocate has to open and then activate the alarm. When that kiddo leaves the room, an alarm goes off so that we can see where the kiddos are. Some of them are on suicide ideation or self-harm watch. And so some of them have eating disorders. So they might come with instructions such as, do not let into the bathroom 30 minutes after a meal. So they only have anywhere between 10 and 13 kiddos. And so they watch them, interact with them. The whole idea is to build skills while they are waiting for the next best thing to happen to open up, right? Some of them, I've seen some of these kids, anorexia nervosa, a condition which a normal weight person, usually an adolescent woman, continuously loses weight, but still feels overweight. I have seen skin on bones and this person feeling like they are so obese and they are starving themselves. So they go to therapy and they work with folks to get help for this eating disorder. I rarely see bulimia nervosa in the 4 years I've worked. We had one kid. He didn't stay very long, so I didn't get to see it firsthand, But the anorexia, that one I've seen a lot. It's terrible.
Bulimia is more prevalent than anorexia. It's just that you notice it more with anorexia. One of the main signs with bulimia is like you find out from dentists because of wear and tear on teeth.
All right.
Because of the acidity.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just harder to find out something's going on.
Yeah, I don't know what experiences folks have had in the class, but kids will try and throw up after every meal. I'm thinking of 2 or 3. I am not sure if they had a diagnosis for bulimia. I'm not sure, but you've seen shows. There are shows, right? On telly, daytime TV shows around this, the weight loss program.
I had a friend that suffered from bulimia for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was actually like very common within like her family.
How did she get help?
We were in like 8th grade and then finally the parents like basically ended up taking me to a therapy and
Okay.
counselor and everything.
So therapy helps this young person. So
Yeah.
therapy tends to work, and that's the major issue, trying to get at the heart of the problem, going to therapy and counseling. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, I have a lot of this in my family, like my big family. It was interesting because my sister went through like a special clinic for it.
Mhm.
And a lot of times those two things are coupled with each other. Someone will start off with anorexia.
Right.
And then throughout their journey of like trying to
Yeah.
get better, they'll actually end up with bulimia. So like together with each other. And like, it's interesting, like the treatment includes like, kind of what you said, like when they eat meals and stuff, like people have to be there to like watch them eat.
Right.
Like make sure they don't go to the bathroom, and they have to eat like very specific foods, and like their whole day is on like a special schedule. It's crazy. It's like
Yeah.
military time, it's like,
Yeah.
but I just thought it was interesting, like, they're 2 different conditions, but usually they're like, they go together.
Right. And in my experience too, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable with us, right? With some of the kids at the nonprofit, the ones with the bulimia, there's oftentimes sexual abuse there. So they try and stuff themselves so that they get ugly. They don't shower and soil themselves so that they try and fend the offender away. You understand? So there's a lot of trauma and abuse around, a lot of what goes on here. With the one client I'm thinking of, this young lady was 16 years old, I think, or somewhere there. And their mom was anorexic. This kid was a bigger kid, and they thought they were ugly because mom told them they're overweight. So this kid was now starving themselves to try and please mom because mom told them they're fat. So there were other things, childhood neglect and abuse, which is why the kid was now in protective care, and now getting help for all the trauma, all the neglect, and eating disorder. It's then associated or leads to other issues like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, back problems. Reasons for eating disorders. So I was kind of getting at that. I talked about the first two. Sometimes it's genetic, number 3. And so twin studies show that eating disorders are more likely to occur in identical twins rather than fraternal twins. With the genetic factor as well, sometimes our weight and our body type and structure can resemble those of our biological parents. My mom is on the, she was on the heavy side. So my 5 sisters watch their weight a lot because of the genetic factor. They know that if they are not careful with themselves, they can gain a lot of weight because of the genetic factor. So they try and watch their weight because of that. I love this figure that's in your book that is talking at eating behavior and what leads to eating behavior. So there are biological reasons. There are psychological reasons. Depends what kind of mood you're into. I once had a student, I remember her this way. She would say, I'm in the mood for a taco. She loved tacos. So whenever we talked about food, we would talk about tacos. And I remember one time she talked about how it was connected to a mood. She would say, I need a taco. So I could tell what kind of mood she was depending on what she wanted to eat. She was a foodie. So we talked a lot about food in that particular class. There are also socio-cultural reasons around our eating behavior, culturally learned taste preferences. We talked a little bit about that, and we showed you a video in the last class. So this table is showing you theories and physiology of emotion. And there are 5 theories. The James Lange theory. Emotions arise from our awareness of our specific bodily responses to emotion arousing stimuli. An example of the James Lange theory is observing our heart racing after a threat and then feeling afraid. There's 4 other theories there. And take notes, there will be a question around these theories here in your learning check for this chapter. In the 2-track brain, sensory inputs may be A, routed to the cortex via the thalamus for analysis, and then transmitted to the amygdala, which is responsible for emotional regulation, or B, routed directly to the amygdala via the thalamus for an instant emotional reaction. Let's talk about some basic emotions. Most emotion scientists will talk at these 5: anger, fear, disgust, sadness, and happiness. Izzard added joy, interest or excitement, surprise. Sadness is the same, anger is the same. Added shame as well. As we think about basic emotions, Tracy and colleagues talked about pride and love in addition to the ones that are listed here. So it can be a fine line to some of these concepts, right? Identify the emotions generally present in infancy. Carol Izard analyzed facial expressions of infants and putting a face to the name of the emotion. So in the first one, we're seeing that little black kiddo, that's joy, followed by anger, interest in the kiddo on the far right over there on C. D is disgust. E is surprise, sadness, and then fear. So Izard is the one who put the names to those emotions by studying infants' facial expressions. This is not in your textbook, but I thought I would put it here. This comes out of my HD 311 class where we talk about early childhood development. And so when we study emotional development, early emotional development of young kids, what can we expect from kids at different stages of their development? At birth, they cry, and then they are content when their diaper is changed or when they drink some milk. So if we are to ask what are the first emotions to appear in infants, generally it's attraction or withdrawal to a stimulus, right? At 6 weeks, we start to see the social smile in infants. At 3 months, they start to laugh. They become more and more curious around what's happening. At 4 months, we start to see full responsive smiles. Between 4 and 8 months, we begin to see anger. They start to get angry. I saw that with my little nephew in Jersey. If we give him his milk, he's gotta have the milk and he's gonna down it in like 1.5 minutes. If you take the bottle away from him, or he gets angry, he's a sweet baby, but if you wanna see him angry, take his milk away from him during a feed. Between 9 and 14 months, fear of social events. So now they are now afraid of strangers or separation from their caregiver. At 12 months, fear of unexpected sights and sounds. By age 2, most toddlers display the entire spectrum of emotions that we talked about in the previous slide and begin to regulate their reactions. Why? Why do we see this development in infants, in children? Well, some explanations include it's a cultural thing. What mechanisms influence the norms of development? Culture and experience influence the norms of these development, the development of these emotions and reactions. Like a crisis control center, the autonomic nervous system arouses the body in a crisis and calms it when the danger has passed. So that is just talking at different things and how our bodies respond to crisis. Objective 1013, how effective are polygraphs in using body states to detect lies? The polygraph is a machine commonly used in attempts to detect lies, measures several of the physiological responses accompanying emotion. You see, the thing with polygraphs, our physiological arousal is much the same from one emotion to another. So for example, with anxiety, irritation, and guilt, all of these might prompt similar physiological reactivity. as we think about the problem with polygraph testing people. Second, many innocent people do respond with heightened tension to the accusations implied by the critical questions. The use of guilty knowledge questions and new forms of technology may produce better indications of lying. Lie detection. Polygraphs measure emotion-linked autonomic arousal, changes in breathing, heart rate, perspiration. About 30% of the time, polygraph tests are just wrong. The concealed information test is more effective. So they are starting to move away from polygraphs because they don't necessarily elicit accurate information, because those physiological responses between, hey, I'm so anxious, I'm being accused of this thing, a lot of the times they were wrong. 30% is a large number. 3 out of 10 polygraphs were wrong. That's not an accurate test then, right? Detecting emotions in other people. The brain detects subtle expressions in reading nonverbal cues and nonverbal threats. Facial muscles reveal emotional signs. Deceit can be difficult to discern. When viewing the morphed middle face, which evenly mixes anger with fear, physically abused children were more likely than non-abused children to perceive the face as angry. So this is a study that was done by Pollack and Kister in 2002. And again, in a different study in 2003. This whole issue of being able to discern emotional cues from others is very, very important. The challenges around that, for example, with our autistic kids, it can lead to bullying. It can lead to fights. I see it in the nonprofit all the time. Kids who have a difficult time reading that, hey, this, kids goof around and they joke and they can't tell that it's too much, time to stop. And then now all of a sudden they're being ostracized. That can lead to a riot in the program where you need 911 services. So that ability or inability to discern emotions in others is a pretty big deal. And so we train our skills trainers to work with kiddos who struggle in this area. What about when we bring in the issue of gender? What does that do to expressing and experiencing emotion? Women generally surpass men reading emotional cues, emotional literacy, expressing empathy, remembering all of these things better. Male and female film viewers did not differ dramatically in self-reported emotions or physiological responses, but the women's faces showed much more emotion. No surprise there, right? Would you say this face is male or female? Yes. If your kidney was on the line, would you say, and yet to answer, would you say it's male or female? Okay. Researchers manipulated a gender neutral face, so the face is gender neutral to begin with, right? People were more likely to see it as male when it wore an angry expression, and female when it wore a smile. Culture and emotion, as we continue to unpack this issue of expressing and experiencing emotion, signs across cultures. Crying when distressed was generally similar across all cultures. Shaking head when defiant, people from all over the world do that. People all over the world smile when they're happy. Facial muscles speak a universal language. The degree varies among and within cultures. Gestures. Meanings vary from culture to culture. Some nonverbal accents provide cultural cues. So I don't have time to show you a video, but how do different cultures express emotions? Where do we see some of those subtle differences?
You know, like thumbs up with a bad thing in other countries.
I don't know about the thumbs up. Which country is that? Where it's bad?
Yeah.
Where?
My mom was speaking Thai, and then, like, giving a thumbs up or like something like that. can be like the peace sign.
Yeah, that was good,
Peace
yeah.
sign and thumbs up is like equivalent to like Ireland.
It's
Is
like
it?
with someone else.
That's.
That's
So
interesting.
we can get tip, we can get tip. and then, like, really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so asking.
Okay. How many of you have been to India? India. They are shaking their head all the time. So what would be known here is a yes over there, or okay. It's the opposite. It's a cultural difference. Yes, ma'am?
Wait, so you can shake your head no, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's the other?
I don't know. I think you say what you want, but they're constantly shaking their head. Yeah, they're constantly shaking their head. Yeah.
Eye contact.
Eye contact, yeah, is very, very different. In American culture, you gotta look at someone in the eye, right? That's how it shows honesty and confidence, and it's the right thing to do. You look people in the eye. But in other cultures, looking at people in the eye, they are older. Today I said hi to Dr. Johnson. In other cultures, you don't look at your boss in the eye. That would be rude.
There's also.
Yes. Yes, in my culture, I'm not allowed to hug my mom-in-law or my brother-in-law's wife. If we see each other hugging her, some people might frown on that. Not allowed. We are family and we're actually very close, but that will be awkward. Yeah. I'm not allowed to be alone with those two kinds of people. Not allowed. So if we need to go somewhere and we have to ride in the car, we have to find someone else to be in the vehicle with us. You know, culture is
It's all
different.
three, yeah.
Yeah. So, what if
Like,
it's,
what if it's
Ah.
you, your mother-in-law, and your sister-in-law?
yeah, that would be awkward. That would be, you have to find someone else, a neutral person to be in the vehicle. Yeah. No, it's just a cultural thing. Just a cultural thing. Yeah.
So you can't be alone with the women?
Certain kind of women, no. I can be alone with my sisters, but not people who are not like my in-laws.
Oh.
Not really. Fade upon and hugging them, fade upon. Yeah.
So you did just say hi?
I just say hi and say bye. Yeah. And there's a certain way of clapping. The man clap like this. So when we greet each other and it's time to say hello to mom, I clap to say mom. And I say a totem, and then I say, how are you?
It's like this.
Yeah, and then the women do this. And we clap, and it's done together, done together. Yeah, and there's a way of doing it. So before you actually say anything, do this. How are you, mom? Yeah, oh, you like my son? Oh, it was cool. Yeah, how do you say it? It's great, you know, and so it's a culture thing. So, hand was up in the back.
Oh, you trying to.
Yeah. And also in Japan, for example, in Asia, this whole smiling business, no. No. You're supposed to hide your emotions and be very stoic. So all your expression, no, that's a rule. That's uncultured. That's being unmannered. So culture is very different in terms of how we express emotions and what gestures are appropriate and not appropriate. When I worked with the UN in Zimbabwe, our boss, our chief, talked about how he got into serious trouble. He was working, I think it was in East Timor, I don't remember, but in a certain country, you don't touch children's hands. Not allowed. So he went to the Secretary of Social Development house for dinner. The young kid came out to say hi. And so he touched the kiddo's head and folks ran to say, don't do that. Not allowed. And he just said, I didn't enjoy that dinner at all. I was awkward. because I didn't know. And I learned the horrible way not to do that. Didn't know. Yeah.
There was in Thailand, but another thing maybe there's pointed to what they're trying to do here. Because it's about cleanliness, like touches inside.
There you go.
It's supposed to be, I think it's considered a really historic body, so. I think that's basically.
Yeah, yeah. So you can offend people depending on what's culturally appropriate or what's not appropriate in certain cultures. So. Culture and emotion, as people of different cultures, do our faces speak differing languages? Which phrase expresses disgust in this slide deck over here? Someone said F. Do you all agree? It's people from different walks of life here. Which phrase do you think represents anger? Which one represents happiness? From left to right, top to bottom, happiness, surprise, fear, sadness, anger, disgust. So you were correct. Facial muscles speak a universal language for some basic emotions. Interpreting faces in context is adaptive. Cultures differ in how much emotion they express. And cultural differences also exist within nations. Like most psychological events, emotion is best understood not only as a biological and cognitive phenomenon, but also as a socio-cultural phenomenon. How are we doing on time? 7 more minutes. Okay, we should be okay. I have a few more slides. The effects of facial expression. Facial expression communicate, amplify, and regulate emotion. Behavior feedback effect. This is the tendency of behavior to influence our own and others' thoughts, feelings, and actions. Have you ever been to a place where everyone is happy and they just received good news and how that can affect your mood? Or if you go into a place and everyone is angry and you can feel the tension. So that's a behavior feedback effect. Motivation at work. The healthy life, said Sigmund Freud, is fueled by love and work. So being able to work is so important. Having a job is a necessary way to make money, which is why most of you are here, because you want to get a job at the end of all of this and be able to sustain yourself. You want a career. A career is an opportunity to advance from one position to another. Some people feel called to do what they want, to do what they do, right? Fulfilling a socially useful activity. Religious folk tend to feel called into those vocations. I don't know if any of you have ever been taught by a teacher who was called to teach, and what the difference was when you interacted with a professional who's called into that profession. When I was at the hospital in New Jersey, I interacted with so many nurses. Some of them were in a job, some of those nurses, they were in a job, it's just a job. Some of them, that's their career, they've been doing it a long time. Certain things were done so naturally, you could tell the one with experience and the one without, very easy. One or two, I thought were called into nursing. My goodness me, they brought this beautiful peace. They were really knowledgeable. They were incredibly kind and unashamedly nurses, you know? Some people seem like they're called to do that. It happens naturally, beautifully, elegantly, gracefully, articulately, as though they were called into doing that. So people have different attitudes to work. And so there are different motivations why people do what they do, which is why it's so important for you to figure out what brings you joy and what you can do, even if they say to you, we will not pay you. People who flow in their work, artists, dancers, composers, are driven less by extrinsic rewards, money, cars, perks, praise, promotion, and are more motivated by intrinsic rewards. It just brings them joy to do it. So if we ask you what leads to satisfaction in the work you do now, that might be unfair. But if we line up a bunch of professionals who have been doing what they've been doing for a long time, if you ask them what leads to work satisfaction, oh, this is my 5th year now teaching. What makes this job nice? Graduation and students getting jobs. That makes me feel good. When some of my students write me to say, hey, I need a recommendation letter for this gig, and they get it, that makes me feel good. Industrial organizational psychology applies psychological principles to the workplace. Personnel psychology studies the principles of selecting and evaluating workers. Organizational psychology studies how work environments and management styles influence worker motivation, satisfaction, and productivity. Who are my psych majors again? So these are 2 different lines of psychology that you can pursue. Oftentimes you have to go all the way to getting a PhD to function in these kinds of roles. Not necessarily, but that's where you make the most money. How many of you watch a movie called Billions? It's not a movie. It's a series called Billions on Showtime. It's about this guy who owns an investment firm. He's a billionaire, and the show is about him. It's a very, very good show. So he has an organizational psychologist on staff. Her job is to make sure that the investors are at the top of their game and are highly productive. She's paid a lot of money such that she actually owns a stake in the company. And whenever he has big meetings or whatever, he goes into a session with this industrial organizational psychologist, and she gets him ready and helps him perform his best. So some of you with psychology, your human development degrees, you might go into interviews with people. And so these are some issues around personnel, psychology, human resources type psychology. Many of you will go into interviews, and so this is talking at some of the work that is done by personnel psychologists and some of the things they do in selecting the best candidates for positions in organizations. Do you have any questions at all? Your homework is to read part 1 of chapter 12. The objectives are already up, so you'll be able to see those and work on those. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget the reflection questions. Have a beautiful weekend and stay safe. Bye. Sure.